this recipe, and I know you guys are going to really like it too. It's going to be kind of a more involved tutorial here for you, because what we're going to do is we're going to make a bread dough that it just takes only minutes to make. This isn't a dough that you have to knead or you have to let rise or anything like that. We're just going to mix up some basic ingredients. We've got some warm water, we've got some yeast, some flour, and some salt. That's it. And we're just going to stir it just to combine it. We don't have to knead it or anything. And then we're going to pop it in a lid on it, and we're going to keep it in the refrigerator. And it can stay in the refrigerator for up to 2 weeks. And anytime that you want to make something with bread dough, you can just come and grab a hunk of dough off of it and make whatever it is that you want to make. And so I love that, because a lot of times I do make a really nice like homemade bread if I have time. But sometimes when we're working and doing chores on the homestead and I'm just going to go warm up some soup or something, I wished I had some bread to serve with it, and I don't have time to make bread. So this is such a great go-to. It only takes a couple minutes to make somewhere in your week, and you can just have it in the refrigerator for those times that you don't have time to cook anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the dough. And then I went ahead and made a thing of it last night, so that, because I really like this to sit in the refrigerator for about a day before I start using it. So I made it last night, put that in the refrigerator, and then I'm going to use that dough. We're going to make several things with it. So first off, we're going to make the dough to show you how it's done, and I'll pop it in the refrigerator and I'll have it to use for some time, and then I'll go grab the one that I made last night. And we're going to make a flatbread, an Italian flatbread. We're going to make some breadsticks and some rolls, and then some jam rolls. They're like cinnamon rolls, but instead of cinnamon and sugar, you put jam on them. So we're going to make those 4 things. Now, I like to kind of look at this as one recipe would be like 5 different, if you divided it into 5 different sections, you can make 5 different things. Now, of course, if you're going to be feeding a lot of people and you want to turn the whole entire thing into breadsticks, well then, you know, that's just great. But one lump of dough, like a fifth of it, would make maybe an 8x8 pan of cinnamon rolls, or it would make 4 to 5, 6 breadsticks, depending on how long those would be, and then maybe it would make like a half a dozen rolls, and maybe a flatbread about that big. So if you divided it, well, that's 4 things. So if you divided this in 4s, then it could make all 4 of those things, and that would be about the amount that it would make for each thing. So we're going to get started. I'm going to show you how easy this is to mix this up, and then we'll go grab the one out of the refrigerator, and we will start making some really fun stuff with it. Now, I like to use this food grade bucket. It can hold a lot. It can hold 8 quarts, and so this, I could probably put 2 to 3 recipes of the bread dough in this, and then it has a lid that pops right on, so I can just keep it in the refrigerator, and it's just nice and clean. And I like that it has the square corners, because it just fits. It's not like keeping a bowl in your refrigerator. This just tucks nicely into the corner, and it doesn't take up as much room as, say, like a bowl would take. So I really like something like this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start adding our ingredients. Into our bowl, we're going to add 3 cups of warm water. And we're going to add 2 tablespoons of yeast, active dry yeast. And we're just going to give that a little stir. And then we're going to add 6½ cups of flour. And we're going to add 1½ tablespoons of salt. And I'm just going to stir this up. Now this is going to be more of a sticky dough. And so you can kind of stir it like this, but then I usually kind of finish it up with my hands. And we're not kneading this at all. We're just stirring it or kneading it with our hands just enough to get everything mixed up, and then we're done. We don't have to do anything more. Alright, so just finish mixing it with your hands, and once it's fully incorporated, you are done. All you need to do is put the lid on it and pop it in your fridge, and then by tomorrow you can start using it. So as you can see in this bucket, there is a lot of room left. So you could double this depending on the size of your family. It's just Hans and I, so this is plenty for us. So the bread dough is done. That was super easy and quick. You could literally do this in about 5 minutes. And now we're just going to go pop this in the fridge, and then we'll get started on the other ones. But one thing that I do want to mention, a lot of times when I make bread, I use sprouted. I grind my own wheat, and then I have an electric mill, and I grind my own wheat, and I either make sourdough with it, and so it's soaking overnight, over a long period of time it's soaking, or if I'm not making sourdough and letting it soak, which it's so much more healthier to have a bread dough that has been soaked. So if I'm not making sourdough, if I'm making something just real quick that's not going to be, you know, soaking overnight, I will grind my sprouted grain, because that's the same thing. So you can buy sprouted flour. So this would be a completely healthy way to make bread. Just making it with just flour, you know, it's not going to be as healthy. It's still going to be a lot more nourishing than just going and picking something up at the grocery store. But if you want to take it up that extra notch of being very healthy, then either grind your own flour and use sprouted grains, or buy sprouted flour, and it will be just as healthy as making like a loaf of sourdough bread. So I'm going to go pop this in the refrigerator and we'll get started. So I pulled out a tub of dough that I made yesterday. I wanted to make the dough for you guys and get it in the refrigerator, but then I wanted to continue on and show you several different things that you can do with this dough. So I made a portion last night and pulled it out to use today so that we can continue on. So it's much easier if you get your hands wet or if you put oil on them, because this is more of a sticky dough. So the first thing that we're going to make with this is we are going to make a flatbread, an Italian flatbread. And so I'm just going to pull out a grapefruit-sized ball of dough. You know, it just all kind of depends on how big or how many of these you want to make. But if I just did this with my plain hands without oiling them, it would be really super sticky. So you definitely want to grease your hands. And just press it out. And put little divot finger marks in it. Now I'm not making these very big because I want to have enough dough to show you a couple different things. So you know, I don't know what size your family is, but you may want to do 2 recipes of when you make the bread dough and keep it in your refrigerator, because it just, you know, all depends on how often you want to use it and how many you're feeding. Because this isn't going to make a very big flatbread. But you want to get those finger divots in, because it, you know, will just look more like flatbread and it'll hold more flavoring. So all we're going to need is just a little bit of olive oil. Just spread that on top. And a sprinkling of Italian seasoning, Or if you prefer, you know, basil or oregano, putting your own mixture of spices, that, as well as flaked salt. I like this pretzel salt or flake salt. They're just much bigger pieces instead of just regular, you know, table salt. So I'm going to put that on as well. So that is done. It seriously could not get any easier. I mean, mixing up that dough and just having it right in your refrigerator where you can pull it out and make like a quick flatbread for those nights that you don't have time to make like a nicer homemade bread. So you could use this. You could make pizzas with them, make little individual pizzas about this size and top them with pizza sauce and cheese and whatever toppings. Or you could even make this as a dessert pizza with butter and cinnamon and sugar. So lots of fun things you can do with this. So there is no need to let this rise. It's ready to go. So I preheated the oven for 375. I'm going to pop it in and it'll only take about 8 to 10 minutes and you will be done with this one. Okay, so the flatbread is in. It only took about 10 minutes to cook, and now you can either slice it up and serve with marinara sauce or put a few toppings on it and just stick it in the oven for a second to melt it, and you would have pizza. So many things you can do with this. I really like making this this recipe with it. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to make is we're going to stay in the Italian family, and we're going to make some Parmesan garlic breadsticks. So I'm going to get another portion of dough out, and I like to oil my counter a little bit so it doesn't stick, or you can put some flour. And then of course I need to oil my cookie sheet, or if you have the parchment paper or however you like to do it. It just needs to be greased. So I am going to cut this into equal portions. I'm just going to make 4. I want to have enough dough to show you a couple other things you can do with this. Now if I was doing this for dinner, I would do a lot more. I definitely want to not use up all the dough just on the breadsticks. So we're just going to form these into the shape of a breadstick, just like a log. And this dough is very elasticity, so like it wants to bounce back. So you just have to kind of work with it for a minute. I'm going to just do the oil since that's what I have out. Alright, so the next step that we're going to do is I have some melted butter. I have about 1/4 of a cup of melted butter. And I'm going to use some garlic powder. It's about a tablespoon of garlic butter, of powdered garlic. And just give it a stir, and then you're going to brush this over the breadsticks. And save a little bit back, just because when they come out of the oven and they're still hot, we'll brush the remaining over the top of them and they'll soak right in because it's, hot. So I always like to leave a little bit behind. The amount of butter that you use is going to depend on the amount of breadsticks. I probably made too much just because I was thinking I was making more of these, but I'm only doing 4. So, they smell so good. The garlic is so strong. And then, as always, I like to sprinkle the sea salt. Now, this is a flaked like what you get like on a pretzel. I really like using the salt on things like this, not just table salt. All right, and that is it. That is so easy. So we're gonna, I think these are $3.75. The flatbread I think is $3.50. So you can look on the printable recipe to get the exact temperatures and amounts of time. But like the flatbread, these don't need to rise either. You can just pop them right into a preheated oven. I did want to show you guys the salt that I'm talking about. Do you see how it's in flakes? That is such a tastier, like when you get a bite of a breadstick and you get a big old flake of salt like that. So it's flake salt or pretzel salt. So that's what you'd be looking for. So there's one last ingredient while the oven is preheating. I forgot to mention, we need to put Parmesan cheese on the top as well. Once you've brushed the butter and garlic mixture, then top them off with Parmesan cheese, and now they're ready to go into the oven. So the breadsticks are finished and they smell so delicious. It's, for how little amount of work it is, they are really a great recipe to do with this dough. They just smell so good. Now I like to serve these with a side of marinara sauce and dip them in there. And that is all there is to making these breadsticks. Okay, so the next thing, we're going to move away from savory things and we are going to make some jam rolls. Now this is like what a cinnamon roll would be, and you could make cinnamon rolls out of this, but this time I'm going to make something called a jam roll, to where instead of cinnamon and sugar in your cinnamon roll, we're going to put melted butter and then we're just going to spread a bunch of jam all over it and make cinnamon roll type rolls. So feel free to do that, or to do what I would do if I was doing cinnamon rolls. I would probably put butter and put a bunch of brown sugar and cinnamon, and I like to put a little raw sugar. So you could use this very same thing that I'm doing right here and just change the filling. So I've got a much larger piece of dough for this one, just because I want to fill up the whole pan, and it is sticky, so this one you'll want to use flour. I've been using oil, but I don't want to use oil on my cinnamon rolls or my jam rolls. So just get a pretty large lump of dough, and we're going to roll it out into a rectangle, and this dough is pretty springy, so it's going to want to bounce back. So a lot of times I'll roll it, and if it's bouncing back a lot, like I'll let it sit on the counter and rest for 5 or 10 minutes, and try and roll it out again. But you're just going to have to work with it because it is a pretty springy dough. So here I've got some melted butter, and we're just going to brush this right onto our cinnamon rolls. Save a bit to brush onto the pan that you're going to be placing them in. We're just going to put a bunch of jam on here, whichever flavor of jam that you like. I've got some homemade raspberry jam that I canned last spring that I'm using it. And so just whatever you have will work. So before I start to roll these up, I'm going to get my pan prepared so I can just set them right in. I don't have to wash my hands. So I am just going to take this butter, the rest of it, and I'm just going to pour it in there and spread it all up the sides. And you know, if there's a lot of butter in there, that's fine, because it'll just cook right into the cinnamon rolls and it'll taste really delicious. It'll kind of be like a glaze. It'll mix in with that jam and it'll kind of be like a frosting. So just go up the sides and then just leave all the rest in the bottom of the pan. Right, that'll be really delicious. You know, I just had a brainstorm. I think I'm gonna pour a little bit of this butter out, set it aside, and when they come out of the oven, I'm going to brush the tops with the butter so that there's a lot of butter on the bottom, but then there's kind of a glaze on top as well. So I'm just going to set this aside and use it later. So we're going to go ahead and roll these up and slice them and get them into our pan. Alright, so we're just going to start from the long end and just roll up, and it's going to be a big long log when we're done. When you get to the end, just grab it and pull it up onto the top, and then just pinch it together. And like you'll see here, it's kind of going off on a diagonal, so just kind of push this and pull it off like that. So because this dough is so springy and it was hard to work with, well, not hard to work with, but it just kept springing back. It was hard to make like a perfect rectangle. So as you can see, this is a lot fatter, and then it got a lot thinner down here. So I'll just take the dough and just kind of push it in so that, you know, it's the same, because it was kind of going into a narrow. So you can kind of adjust it by just pushing it in here at the end. Now we're just going to take a knife and we're just going to slice, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. There'll be about 5. And sometimes it might be a little bit easier to put flour on your knife and to put a little bit of flour on the top. It's wanting to stick to the knife itself. And I don't have it on a cutting board, so I don't want to cut my counter. So I'm having to be real careful I don't. There you go. See, as soon as I put flour on it, it really helped. If I was on a cutting board, I'd just go right through and not worry about my counter. A little more flour. There we go. Alright, so I'm just going to pick these up. Got a little spatula to help me get them up off the counter. And just place them in your casserole pan. Alright, so now I've got the oven preheating, and I'm just going to pop these into the oven, and when they're done cooking, while they're hot, I'll spread the remainder of that butter, and then these are done. they're so easy, and you can just make them real quick, like on a Saturday or Sunday morning when you want to have something fun for breakfast. You just pull out a lump of dough and just really quickly do that. And we are going to let this rise for about 10 minutes and then pop it in the oven. But it just doesn't take long at all to have a really fun, you know, breakfast cinnamon roll. Okay, so our cinnamon rolls are done, or should I say our jam rolls. They are finished. And so I'm just going to put the rest of that butter that I saved aside for them, I'm just going to spread that all over the top. And then these are ready to be served. And they smell so delicious. So I know you're going to love this one. So you can do this with jam, or like I was saying, you can just use cinnamon and sugar and just make your traditional cinnamon rolls. All right, so those are finished. Now so the last thing I'm going to do with this dough, I've got one more portion of it left, and this is just your basic dinner rolls. Nothing special about it, and it's so great just having this in your refrigerator that you can just pull it out and make a few quick rolls with it. And if it's, you know, a whole family, or if it's just, you know, a couple people in your family, you could just grab off enough. If you only want 4 rolls, then just grab enough to do 4 rolls. I just love having dough that I can do whatever I want with it. It is pretty sticky, so I like to put plenty of flour on it just so it's easier to work with. So I just pinch off an amount and just kind of fold it, pull the tops and fold it down underneath. Make it just nice and smooth on the top like that. And then I just set it right on a cookie sheet, and that is it. It really is super simple. You could use these, like if you wanted to use more dough and make a little bit bigger of dough balls, you could use it to make sandwiches with. Just cut them like, you know, a bun, or hamburger buns. So if you know, want to make burgers real quick, you could just go grab out some extra large pieces of dough and do this with it, and cook some hamburger buns. You could probably have it done just about as quick as you had your hamburger patties grilled. It would be kind of fun to do like an egg wash, and you could sprinkle some sesame seeds on it, and then it would look more like a, you know, like the kind that we're used to seeing at the store. So you could do an egg wash and put different kind of herbs on top, and then use it to make like meat sandwiches. Or you could just do it as dinner rolls. So as you can see, I'm just grabbing it and just pulling everything to the bottom just so that the top is really nice and smooth. So that last portion made, well, that's gonna make a really big one. So I'm just gonna try and have them be even size. And if it's sticking to you, just stick it some more flour on it. Let's use the rest of this dough to just make a little bitty one. Alright, so these are finished. Now let them set out for about 10 minutes and let them rise. That's about all the time they need. And then pop them into a 350-degree oven, and they should only take about 10 to 12 minutes. And then you'll be finished. And like I said, you can just put some fresh butter over the top of them, and you're good to go. So I'm going to go pop these in the oven, and we'll be right back. All right, so the rolls are done, and these look beautiful. They rose up so perfect by using a little bit more dough than just an average small roll. These make great buns for sandwiches. I mean, look at this, how perfect that is for, this one's small, too small for a hamburger bun, but it would be a great slider for a slider. And so if you want something like a hamburger bun or for a chicken sandwich, just maybe, you know, use a little more dough to make them bigger. But definitely you're going to want to brush some butter over the top when they come out. And they just feel so soft. I I mean, you would think that if you served these to company, you would think that you had made a more labor-intensive homemade dinner roll instead of just something you grabbed out of the back of your refrigerator and made in 3 minutes. So I just love having these dinner rolls just ready for whenever we need them. So there you have it. We took very little time to make a batch of refrigerator dough, and then tomorrow you could pull that out and you could make a half a dozen either hamburger buns or dinner rolls. We have a flatbread, we have garlic parmesan breadsticks, and we have a pan of jam rolls. So this is definitely worth your time, and it's just so great to have it in your refrigerator for those nights that you just don't have time to make something homemade, or if you have drop-in company and you weren't expecting anybody and you know that you have this in your refrigerator. So if you want the full complete recipe, go ahead and click the link below to get that. And if you enjoyed this, why don't you give me a thumbs up and go ahead and subscribe and click that little bell, because I post stuff here weekly and I have a lot of delicious content that I bring to my channel. So you're not going to want to miss anything. So go ahead and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.